All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another week of the Author's Dilemma podcast show. It is Thursday evening, and today is a special day. I didn't say special podcast like I usually do, but today is a special day because it is leap year, leap day, and we only get one of these every 4 years.
So happy birthday to anyone who is only a few years old and can already drive.
That's right. That's right. So tonight we're talking about mindset. You got to have one. And my running joke, which I was talking to the other hosts this whole week, was you got to have one. The show's over. Y'all have a great night. No, but all jokes aside, wow, mindset is really important when it comes to writing because there's so much that goes into it. And we'll talk about it. There's the imposter syndrome, and then the humps that you have to go through the whole authoring process. Getting your work out in front of people, dealing with reviews, dealing with all the positive and the negative side of just existing in. I mean, life is tough enough, but then when you do something like this on top of it, let's take some steroids, people. And
nothing like a hobby that also can lead to massive amounts of rejection.
Yeah, well, right. And so how do you deal with it? How do you get over it? And how do you move on to the next step? And so tonight we're we're gonna do what we do best is we're gonna pants this show. We're all coming at this at different angles, and and we're gonna talk about it. So, by the way,
we introduce ourselves.
Yes, I got so excited because it was leap year, and
we're so glad they're joining us for Leap Day. It's
thank you for keeping me honest. It's been this is episode 8, by the way, and I am J.E. Jack, and I write urban fantasy and paranormal thrillers.
And I'm Hyrum Hawks, and I still write hard sci-fi and sci-fantasy.
And I'm Jennifer Carr, and I write Christian suspense and clean contemporary romance.
Which brings us to the next portion of the show. Hyrum, how are you doing your business? What's going on? What are you learning? What are you doing?
Well, this week, I've been kind of in that post-book completion and release slump a bit. I've been fiddling around with a bunch of different things, trying to see what catches my attention. Tried taking my first book about a bioengineered talking ferret and rewriting the first chapter. Well, basically writing a new first chapter. Tried working on the sequel. So we're trying to see what sticks next. That is part of the problem with being a pantser, is especially one who is as chaotic as I am, is you write what comes next, not necessarily what's logical.
So are you chaotic good or chaotic neutral?
I think I'm chaotic good, but that you'll get a different answer if you ask my wife or my ex-wife.
Yeah, well, for everyone that may not understand, that's a D&D reference. So I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so everything.
Oh, I did my first D&D session as a GM with my children and my wife this last weekend. No, in the game we were doing, it's GM.
Oh, which game were you playing?
It's the new one I found at the conference, the recent convention. It's called Arium, A-R-I-U-M. It was a fun. It's a different version.
I've never heard of that.
Very different. It's basically you make your own world together and then do it. So it's a good one for your family because we don't want to be dictated to by our dad when we're 20-somethings.
Right. All right. So Jen, tell us about your business. What's going on in your world?
Oh, my first draft went to my editor, which is hooray, hurrah, that's wonderful. And then I immediately sat down and started writing the next book in the series.
Important.
And so as of today, I'm about 10,000 words in.
Wow.
And then I know it's just like, blah, it's like word vomit. And
when did you start on that? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt it. When did you start?
What day did I say? I think it was Monday. I think I started on it Monday. It's just been one of those boom, boom, boom. Now keep in mind, this whole story has been percolating in my mind for a while. And the more I write it, the more the story plays out ahead of me. Because let me just go ahead and tell you that I texted my editor this morning and was like, so on the way home from church last night, I started book 4 in my head. And she was like, you haven't written book 3. You're ridiculous. And I was like, I know, but book 4. So anyway.
Didn't you make yourself cry?
No, I cried. I tell you, so what happens when I hear certain songs, the story pops into my head and I heard a song and I went, oh my gosh. And I started just weeping over the characters and the story that's going to play out. And so then I wrote it, like I have what I call the garbage can, where I just like word vomit into what the summary of the book is going to be. It's not an outline by any means. It's just like every word that pops into my head. And and then I cried again this morning. So it's going to be a doozy.
And
that is true. We all do get emotional.
We do over our characters. Yeah.
So 10,000 words. I'm not jealous.
I'm sorry.
No, actually, that's awesome. I mean,
it's very exciting. But here's the thing. I'm also very lucky and blessed to be able to work from home. And so when I have free time, I can just do that. Whereas we're very thankful that you're out there doing the job that you're doing, because that is not a job that I would ever want.
Yes. Well, thank you.
This is a question I wanted to have. We talk about after Josh. I just raise your name.
It's okay. Over here.
That guy.
How this fits into the whole mindset thing, but when you've got a book like yours and you've got a job at home, how do you keep yourself from maybe not scheduling yourself as heavily if you choosing clients so that you can write more?
How
do you keep yourself from doing that? Yeah.
Oh, so I stopped seeing clients at the end of last year. So that kind of, because this job has taken over. So
good.
I don't have to. Yeah.
Balancing is that's a mindset issue.
It is. And you are not.
Oh, yes. Yes. And so those of you that aren't watching this live with us, we're on YouTube or on our live show on Facebook, we kind of look like the Brady Bunch, because we're all in our little squares looking, looking over at I'm looking down at anyway. Okay, so for me, I'm almost done with my urban fantasy novel. It is currently at 104,000 words, which is, here again, I write in little snippets. I write 500 words pretty much around that. Sometimes I'll write more. Every once in a while I'll write less, but it's always around 500 words a day. And this one's been a long time coming. This was actually, I started this one probably about 2 years ago, and then I got 90,000 words in on it, and I got so frustrated and so procrastination, I developed with this, that I wrote another book instead. And that's what something wicked came. Something wicked came out, and so I wrote that instead, and now I'm back trying to finish this. And so today is actually a special day since it is leap year. I was looking on Facebook, and it notified me of a memory that I posted 4 years ago, because I don't see it every year. It only happens once every 4 years.
Yeah.
And today was the day that I started my author career, my author writing, because them bones today 4 years ago was the day I woke up that morning and outlined, put different, kind of like what you're saying, your garbage can of ideas, thoughts. And that was the day I started writing. And, and then September of that year of 2020 is when I actually published it. So,
awesome.
7 months, it's possible. So, and that's the thing. That's another thing with mindset is sometimes we get, we have a lot of ideas in our heads, and we jump from things we want to do, from like this thing to this thing to this thing to this thing we want to do. And it becomes like a cyclic race in our minds of like, okay, well, I want to do that. I want to be a photographer. Okay. Or I want to be a writer next. Oh, I want to be a painter or whatever. I want to learn how to, work on cars or whatever. But if we stay on one thing, it's amazing what happens just a little bit every day. 4 years later, and 4 years later, I have 4 books out, and a 5th one that's going to be out here, by the summer. And I mean, it's just amazing what a little bit over time will get you. So, and that kind of goes into our show today. So, mindset. You got to have it. Yeah. All right.
And we all have one, yes. whether you want it or not, you have one. And
whether you're positive or not.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? You can't always have a positive mindset. Like I get so annoyed with all of these motivational speakers that are like, just change your mindset. And I'm like, have a bad day once in a while. Like you can't always have a positive mindset. It is what it is.
Right. I think it is important to have an attitude of gratitude.
Oh yeah.
But there are days where it's like, it doesn't matter. It's just a bad day. It just sucks.
Yeah.
But I do believe that, it's one of those things, like kind of like what I'm doing now with public speaking. I go back and I listen to these things and I hear myself go, I say that a lot. I'm sorry for everyone that listens. And if that's your pet peeve, I'm working on it.
You.
Yes. Thanks. But with our mindset, it's the same way. If we're always negative and we're always thinking about the bad things that happen to us, well, it's something that we need to revisit and be honest with ourselves. Like, hey, is this the kind of feelings that I want to continue feeling every day about myself or whatever? And those are the when we catch ourselves, if we figure out what the trigger is and we figure out why we're thinking a certain way, well, if we can immediately stop it, and over time, I mean, it's not an overnight thing. I mean, it's something you got to work on. But eventually, I think it is possible to develop where you're more positive than you are negative. And
Absolutely.
I mean, there's people out there. I mean, shoot, they suck the room dry of energy, like those energy vampires. And it's just like, I don't want to be that. So, which, by the way, if you're watching and you want to pop in and say hello, tell us where you're watching from, man, we'd love to see where you're watching from. Oh, yeah. Or in the future, if you're listening to this, shoot us an email at authorsdilemma@gmail.com. We're more than happy to engage and have a conversation. And if you have any questions, there I go again. And if you ever have a question tonight or in the future, be sure to reach out and we'll talk about it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So when it comes to mindset, the first thing I think of is something I've learned from counseling many times and begun to implement after about 25 years of learning it. And that is you are what you fill your mind with.
That's so
now,
true.
When I was a teenager and full of hormones and anxiety, there wasn't much room for anything else. But as I've gotten older, I've been able to begin filling my life with other things. And filling yourself up with positivity can change things. I am kind of naturally cynical and depressed, but
well, you are an engineer.
Yeah, that's true.
But I married the most, I call her relentlessly optimistic. She is the most relentlessly optimistic human I know on earth. And she has continually reminded me that life is not as bad as, whatever is going on. But now I've begun giving that same lesson to my children. And so avoiding that toxic hollowness is kind of the key. For me, mindset comes down to the act of choice. that whole you have two wolves in you. You got to choose which one. How do you do it? You feed one. I've seen so many memes making fun of that metaphor, but it's still a valid metaphor. True. Now, like recently, I've really had to face this one head on with my daughter who's in wrestling, because I have some hangups about wrestling, because I was a teenager in the 90s, and in the 90s, kids were dying from the mindset of wrestling in the 90s. They were dying of dehydration. They were developing eating disorders. They were getting organ failure. And so when my daughter's like, I want to do wrestling, I immediately was like, I don't want you dying. But we talked about it. The coaches talk about it. They fill the kids' minds with a different mindset these days. First off, they actually have rules now, including things like pinch tests, to make sure you're not actually dehydrated. You get disqualified if you are truly dehydrated going into a match. That you're not allowed to lose more weight between weigh-ins than a certain amount, or you're disqualified. Oh, wow. So they put in some engineering preventions, but these coaches are actively preaching against that mindset. And that is a huge deal. And that's really helped me as a dad to be able to say, I'm happy with you losing the weight to get in, but not for your appearance, but for your health. And so by changing that mindset, weight loss should be about health. I'm considered obese by the stupid BMI. I'm a 215-pound, 6'3" man. That's stupid. That's a terrible mindset. If I had that mindset, I recently lost weight. I look skinny. If I lost any more weight, I'd be unhealthy. So my mindset is I'm not trying to lose weight. I in fact will not lose any more weight. I'll try to gain some muscle, not to look good, not because I want to look something special. I mean, I'm married, I don't need that, but because I want to be healthy.
Right.
So let's have a conversation on that. What do we think mindset means? Because it could mean a lot of different things to different people.
That's true. You have to define what you
I'm
think
taking it very
is.
literally.
Because I'm thinking about mindset as like a willpower kind of thing. Like what is your mindset whenever you're dealing with an obstacle? How do you deal with whatever? Jen, what are your thoughts on what is mindset to you?
So when I think mindset, what I'm literally thinking is like my state of mind in the moment or in the circumstance. And I think for me, a lot of times it's a calibration of expectations. That's something that I've had to work on, and it has taken a long time for me to really figure out how to calibrate those expectations. So, depending on what you're facing, the way you approach and calibrate what you expect to happen and the expectations you have of person or circumstance or whatever to respond, that to me is what mindset is. And so, it does make a difference. What you fill your mind with, yes, that makes a difference. Your expectation in the situation also makes a difference. And so I think that it's a bunch of different pieces that all come together, and we probably all see it the same way. We just say it differently.
Right.
It's the setting of your mind. To me, it's like, how is your mind furnished?
Yeah.
Metaphorically. Hopefully not literally.
As far as like being positive and having a positive mindset, or just feeding, garbage in, garbage out, good stuff in, good stuff out. I always heard the analogy or a metaphor or whatever example of listening to a radio. If you tune in to what it is you want to, like, okay, so let's say, hey, if you drive a red Mustang, well, guess what? Now your brain is tuned to red Mustangs, and you're going to see red Mustangs everywhere. And that's kind of how the biology, or at least I think how the biology works. It's like, as you tune your brain into the different thoughts and different subjects that you're really interested into, and then also just being honest with yourself, and then like, oh, hey, adjust, kind of like, you and your daughter having that conversation of, hey, this is where you were, this is where this is, and being able to adjust to get in line with that.
Absolutely. I think also with having a healthy mindset, you have to go into it understanding what you are trying to achieve, if that makes sense. Like when you go into it with your mindset, you're like, okay, what's the goal that I'm trying to get to? And what do I need to change in the way I'm approaching this goal to get there? And so, yeah.
And that brings up an important part is, especially when it comes to writing. Most of our listeners are, I hope most of our listeners are ones that want to write or be authors, or maybe they're authors already, and they probably understand this. You have to, and this goes not just with writing, but any endeavor that we have, like, what is it? Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Right. So you have your goal, that's your destination. And I talked to you already in the past through our chats on Discord, how basically we're driving the car. We're the car.
Yeah.
The map is our, what we want, and the destination is what we want to get to. But really the gas is, why are we doing what we're doing? Like, because it's not easy. This is not.
Yeah.
I tell people, do you really want to be a writer? Do you really want to be an author? Because I don't want to crush their spirit. Right. But at the same time, it's hard.
Well, it's with any hobby, if you try to turn it into more than a hobby, is going to require a level of commitment and exercise and sacrifice and pain that you don't have when you just leave it as a hobby. If I have no idea why I want to get published. It's almost like in some ways I'm questioning my own sanity at times, because it's like I feel the need now, but at the beginning I wrote for the sheer fun of it, and I'm still writing for the fun of it, but I also can see the need in myself, and maybe that's part of the mindset is, what's the point of writing if I don't have an audience? And that's, I don't consider that a bad mindset for me, because I can do it. And that's, again, it's that attitude that I can become a author with a following, not just an author throwing stuff out and saying,
Oh yeah.
But just being would actually be a lot more simple. You write it, and who cares if it's good? You can do that. That's a totally valid thing for an author to do, is to write it and let your kids deal with it when you die.
Well, and I think that's the thing. It's like my biggest why, the reason why I'm doing all this. I think, it took me a long time to get to this point where I understood why I do what I do. And I think it comes, I don't have any kids. So my why is, this is my legacy. This is what I'm leaving behind. And that keeps me going. Like when I come home from a long day of work, and some days my days are very long because I do, my day job is in law enforcement, and sometimes those days are quite long. But I still strive, because down deep, I know my time on this earth is limited, and I have to get my words out, because that's all I'm going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? Everybody has a different why, right? Like yours, to leave a legacy. Mine is because it's a passion, and it's something that I love doing, and like I just can't stop doing it. Just whatever your why is. I have a friend who he's a lawyer, and delusion of grandeur, whatever. But I have a friend who's a lawyer, and he writes because it's the way he decompresses from being a lawyer, right? Like, so there's just whatever your why is, you do have to hold on to that, because sometimes when you lose sight of that why, it becomes more of a job or a chore, and you're just like, this is no longer enjoyable.
Well, I think it's and here there's multiple whys sometimes. I mean, legacy is obviously one, but another one is, I want to do this full time. Like, I like to write. I enjoy, when I actually start writing, the procrastination, it sometimes takes over, but once I'm actually in the moment and I'm writing, and I finish that little segment of the day, and quite honestly, I like the lifestyle. I don't like going out in public. Don't get me wrong, I like people, but
or getting shot at. I'm guessing getting shot at's not fun.
Yeah, well, I like holding out arm's length. It's like, I don't trust people.
I like computer screens; they're really handy for that.
I like engaging people, and I like that. But at the same time, it's just like, the world's an evil place, and I don't like being out in it.
Right.
And I like being at home. I like waking up when I want to wake up, and coming down and doing my own thing. And maybe I'm selfish, but that's the kind of life I want for myself. And I think that, and the cool thing about this life is, I think it's possible.
Yeah.
Anything is possible if you put your mind to it. I saw, in fact, you said, or not you, but I saw a stream today about this lady. She was homeless when she was a teenager, and I guess she builds robots. And I wish I saved it, but Instagram, like, once you pass the reel and you try to go back, you can't find it ever again. But anyway, she talked about, hey, I didn't wait to learn the skill. I did the skill and I learned it, and that developed who I am now. And now I guess she builds robots, and she's into coding, and she does quite for, I don't know, but it was an interesting premise. And it's the same thing with, when it comes to, writing or any endeavor. It's like, you got to get over the mindset, like, and we do need to talk about this, the imposter syndrome, of like, who do you think you are? Well, you become who you are by the process, right? The goals that we want out of our lives, they don't come to us by happenstance. They don't just fall in your lap. They're a byproduct of who we become. If you want to be $1 million winner, you got to become a person that, as a byproduct, is the $1 million, writer, winner, whatever it is.
Yeah. I think I have a good example of what not to do if you want to meet your dreams. So, my parents got me a basketball standard for our backyard when I was 12. We had a cement patio anyway, so when I was 12, they got me one. They installed it. It was great. And I would shoot hoops regularly, and I would daydream about being John Stockton, which does date me. And for those of you young enough to not know who that is, or don't care about the NBA, he was big in the late 90s. And I totally could have. He's my height, about my build, and I was physically healthy. I could have done it, maybe. But I never tried. I refused to do team sports. I would play in my backyard and pretend to be John Stockton. Was that a mindset of success Well, yeah, because I had no interest in actually being in the NBA. I just liked pretending, and turns out that was just a symptom of the fact that I didn't know that I was an author, that I was a storyteller. I was telling a story. I don't want to be in a fantasy book. I don't want to go into my first book and be a prisoner in an Iranian prison. I don't want to go and have to fight evil people in another world. Okay, that one kind of sounds cool, but either way, I tell the stories of the, and so that's the mindset for me, is that if that's the lifestyle you want, like Josh was saying, then do the daydreaming, yes, and then make a plan.
Well,
sure.
I got a story along with that, but first we need to talk about this comment that popped up, because I know Jen's not going to say anything about it. Rob Carr says, I've seen few, if any, actions that bring Jennifer such a feeling of accomplishment and purpose as working to complete her current work in progress.
That guy sounds cool. Maybe you should look him up.
I mean, he's already got the same last name I got. It'd be real easy to change that monogram.
All she has to do is go into the other room and probably find him.
Thanks, Rob.
It's true. I mean, once you do complete something like this, only 1% of the people in the whole population actually do complete it, and so there has to be something to be said for that. I mean, it is a pretty amazing accomplishment. Going back to what you were saying as far as like daydreaming, and you got to be careful though, because
balance.
The brain will, subconscious doesn't. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts on conscious versus subconscious, whatever. But I will tell you that when I was a kid, I daydreamed about being in the military. And I know that, I'm telling you a rabbit trail story, but it's going to nail the point. But anyway, so, I daydreamed about being in the military. I dressed the part for Halloween on different things, career days. I was so interested. I mean, like, my older brother was in the Marine Corps, and I was like, oh man, this is the stuff. I mean, anyway, fast forward, and I was like that up until like 10th or 11th grade. And then in high school, I did a 180. I didn't want to do it anymore. Like, I wanted to get into acting. I wanted to get into films. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a writer. But what was interesting is, I think for so long, I wanted that one subject in my life for so long that subconsciously I was still being propelled forward. And it just worked out that I did join the Marine Corps because of different things at that time. And not only that, but the opportunities that I accomplished in the Marine Corps set me up to be a contractor doing high threat security in Afghanistan, which is arguably the top. I'm not, I certainly wasn't the top, but I served with a bunch of top level, people from the different military units and operators. And I mean, I'm so blessed to be around that. Anyway, long story short, I'm just saying, whatever your focus is, and you put in, you daydream about it, you think about it, you live it, so to speak. It has a way of manifesting it. Self-fulfilling prophecies. It's just like, it has a way of
and anxiety. That's self-fulfilling prophecy is for sure, because especially if you have a tendency towards anxiety, this is something I learned, is that I worry. And so my daydreams sometimes became worries. But I'm going to throw this out there for other authors. Write them down. So I've actually cut down the number of things I worry about dramatically by first off, I do therapy, because everyone should. But second, I started writing them down in little stories in my Google Keep. So it's a notebook. It's online, and I write it down in there as a story happening to someone as a character, and then I tell the story. All right, you're in my log. I'll write you when it's time. I'll deal with you when it's time, and then I drop it to the very bottom of my list. So my worries are in there. I don't have to worry about them anymore because they're there. So my wife dying, which is an irrational, well, it's probably not too irrational. She has a tendency to get surgeries a lot. But I put the worry into that story stick it at the bottom, and it's gone because it's taken care of. And that became a mindset.
Yeah.
I think as creatives, we do have to be worried about that because, we've been blessed with a human brain, and it's an amazing brain, but we're imaginative creatures, right? We think of, we imagine a lot of things, and a lot of times the anxiety that we create, comes from because we what if things, and we imagine these stories that aren't true. And it's the same thing with fear. Anxiety, fear is the same thing. It's like, false evidence appearing real, right?
Yeah.
And this is where we realize this and be honest with ourselves and move on. But okay, so I know, we're kind of all over the place, but so imposter syndrome, how do you deal with it?
I'm an engineer. I'm already too arrogant. I don't have it. So I'll let you two talk about it.
I love that because it's true. Like it's just a common trait for engineers. I don't know why, it just is. They're good at stuff. They've been told they're smart their whole lives, but it's true. And so you live up to that. Now for me, I will say that imposter syndrome has not really been a big issue for me, only because I shook that off a long time ago. Well, I say a long time ago, probably in the last decade. It took me that long because I grew up with full on, everybody was judging me in my mind, right? Like I was constantly afraid of what everybody thought and that kind of thing. And so it just was.
How'd you shake it off?
Well, that is a great question. I'm glad you asked. I quit caring. I just quit caring what other people think. When I was,
it's so bad that she changed her last name from Care to Carr.
That's right. actually, my last name isn't really Carr. I'm just trying to attract that guy on YouTube. I'm like, look, we've got the same last name. Okay, for anybody listening, it's actually my husband that we're talking about. It's actually my husband. Okay, he's not some creeper stalking me. Anyway, so when I was graduating high school, I had gone to the Career Center, and I took this, I don't know what they call an assessment that was like, what should you do with your life? And it told me that my top 3 were to be an actor, to be a writer, or to be a teacher. And I looked at that list and I thought, I could never be an actor. I could never be a writer, because those are 1 in a million jobs that nobody gets, right? Very few people get those positions. So I guess I'll be a teacher. And even then, that was very short-lived. And I did teach. I don't want to do that again. And, so I just I lived that with that mindset of I could never, because that's not for me. That's for everybody else or for anybody else. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago that it was like, hey, guess what? It doesn't matter what anybody else says. If you're passionate about it, do it. Now, I didn't start writing 10 years ago, but, it was just the mindset that slowly evolved into 3 years ago when I finally said, I think I'm going to write a book. And doggone it, I've written 3 and working on 4.
Okay, can you say doggone it again? Because that was the most adorable thing you've ever said.
Doggone it. I don't know. I said, doggone it.
Yeah, you bring up an important part. Labels we tell ourselves.
Yes. And that can affect your mindset.
No, it can, because for so long, and I think a lot of people we are what we do, right? When people ask you, hey, what do you do? You tell them, oh, when I was in the Marine Corps, I'm a Marine. I'm an engineer.
Yeah.
I'm in the military. I'm a teacher. But the thing is we're all multifaceted, and we're all capable of doing a lot of different and a lot of amazing things. And I think for me, the same thing. I was not an artist. I was a Marine.
Yeah.
I was a law enforcement officer. I was this. I was very, and then, but there's always been a part of me.
More than one thing.
Yeah. There's always a part of me that always wanted to do some, photography, and, I did that for quite a while. And, but then it also got to the point where I'm just like, I'm just going to roll the dice, kind of like playing Dungeons and Dragons. I'm just going to roll the dice and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And here we are, and
I'd like to throw something out there. Now, for anyone who's not religious, you can ignore this part, but identity is very important. And for the religious people, try adding one label on the front. Say, I am a child of God, and see what that does for your attitude and your mindset. because then you also can say everything else is subordinate to it. No one can steal that identity. No one can. I've lost my engineer identity because I'm currently unemployed, hopefully for short duration. I'm also a patent agent, but that's kind of on the back burner because clients are hard to get. I'm an author, but I'm not making money at it yet. So those identities are all kind of shaky at the moment.
Yeah.
So make yourself an identity. Whether, if you're not religious, find a different one. Find something that is independent of everything else, and that becomes the anchor holding you in place. And maybe that's part of why I don't care about it, in that kind of imposter syndrome, is because in the end, it's just one of my many identities that are all subordinate to the higher one.
That's true.
Yeah, your identity is important, and I understand where you're coming from with that, because we feed a lot of energy into image in what we are to people, and that's how we introduce ourselves. Like we were talking about the labels. Labels and identities are pretty much the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And even to this day, like I have 4 books, and it's still fun. I still find it strange to say, yes, I'm an author.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a novelist. What does that mean?
You're very new.
On that note.
Yes. All right. We are 36 minutes in. Have we covered everything that we should probably, or is there anything else that we should probably cover on mindset? We kind of waffled. We kind of went all a lot of different areas, but by the way, if you're listening to this in the future and you want to leave a review or send us an email and tell us, hey, this is what I thought, or I would like for y'all to talk about this, to go more in depth about one of the things we talked about either this evening or in the past, please send us a line and we will accommodate.
Yes.
But for tonight,
maybe. It depends what you ask. There could be some
true.
things.
We may respond one way or another, but it may not be live.
Yes. Oh, yes. But all right. I guess
this is what happens when we all have way too much fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, that is another show in the books. Thank you for spending your time with us this evening. If you are here with us live, if you're listening to us in the future, thank you so much for spending your time. We hope you got something out of it. Again, if you did, please send us a line. If you like what we do, subscribe. We will be here next Thursday, same time, same platform, and we hope to see you then. And if you have any show topics or anything, I've already beat that dead horse. Y'all have a great night. We'll see you next time.
Adios.